Om Shri Sai Ram, offering my most humble and prayerful salutations at the divine lotus feet of our beloved Bhagwan, Sri Satya Sai Baba. It gives me immense pleasure to bring to you another episode of his story through the eyes of his voice, but now his story as narrated by him, as experienced and shared with us, is a very humble attempt to share this story with all of you. So let us start this evening's session with our prayer, and I would request all of you to please join me in. O Lord, take my love and let it flow in fullness of devotion to Thee. O Lord, take my hands and let them work incessantly for Thee. O Lord, take my soul and let it be merged in one with Thee. O Lord, take my mind and thoughts and let them be in tune with Thee. O Lord, take my everything and let me be an instrument to work for Thee. Om Shri Sai Ram. Welcome to this amazing journey. Ramayana has been a very fascinating epic. It has intrigued me, touched me for a long time, especially when we heard Ramayana from Bhagwan. A new perspective, a new insight into the life of an avatar comes forward. Unfortunately, however knowledgeable, however close in the physical proximity one could be, but to understand the nuances, the intricacies, the beautiful expositions and interactions of Avatar, only Avatar himself can describe and explain, and that is when he chooses to do so. It took us 2 eons to get a real perspective of Ram, to understand or to get a glimpse into that magnificent avatar that Avatar Ram was. Oh, audio is not clear yet? Okay, let me see if I can. Please let me know if audio becomes any better. I'll speak. Can you hear it now? Is it clear? Now is it okay? Okay, I hope it is clear now since I have removed that audio. We have, as I have explained before, we have taken Ram Katha Rasvahini as written by Bhagwan as the direct source of this story narration. But there were many occasions when Bhagwan shared some behind the scenes stories which he has not penned down in Ram Katha Rasvahini. And when you think about all of that, the story becomes more interesting because there is so much to learn and so much to explore from an avataric life. So we saw the whole journey
of how Bhagwan has narrated the story in first hand. I recall personally when we asked him, Swami, this was not mentioned in any of the literatures or any of the epics. Bhagwan very smilingly said, "It's my story. Who will know better than me?" And when he narrates Ramayana, it gets a new perspective, a new shape altogether. And we have slowly tried to bring you those aspects of Ramayana, which will not only give us an insight into the Lord of the avataric life, but may develop a better understanding of this present avatar also. Because when we start seeing that the purpose of avatar always remains the same, it's very strange. Even though the human consciousness changes, the scope of avatar also expands according to that, but the purpose remains the same. And there are many stories in Ramayana which I feel were many times underrated. One such event was when Bharat goes to meet Ram in the forest. When he comes back, we'll look at the story later on also in detail. But when he returns back from his paternal home and he faces the news of his father's departure, brothers going to forest, he's certainly shattered. And later on, he takes the whole army to the forest. In fact, he wanted to go himself, but people started joining him, and it turned out that the whole Ayodhya decided to venture and go and see Lord. And he could not say no to anybody because he believed that everybody had their own reasons and they were passionate for Bhagwan Ram. Why not? And mind you, it used to take normally around 5 days to 6 days, depending on how fast or slow you want to move, to come from their maternal land to Ayodhya. When Dashrath, when Ram leaves, so in a normal that we'll look at the calculations later on, but on an average, it was hardly 3 days. Here Ram leaves and Kekai orders that go and bring Bharat. And a non-stop journey by the envoy is done, who reaches the Kekaya place and he says, "You are urgently required in Ayodhya." And both the brothers, Shatrughan and Bharat, leave immediately for Ayodhya. So in next 3 days, they don't stop because Bharat has a premonition that there is something not right. They reach in 3 days back to Ayodhya. And then he gets involved with father's last ceremonies and all of that. That takes him another 2 to 3 days. And they together decide to march towards the forest. So practically, there is a week, almost like a week, before Bharat reaches Ram. So, in and all, Ram has left Ayodhya for a week, for example, and he is now settled in Panchavati, wherein Bharat comes with his whole army. That story, how he reaches, what happens, we'll look at it later on. When he reaches there and he meets his brother, it's a very emotional meeting. Bharat wants Ram back, and Ram, very beautifully, as he is established in Dharma, he says his duty is in the forest, and Bharat's duty, as per the father's command, is in Ayodhya. And they both remain strong in their virgins. And the result is a conversation between Bharat and Ram. This has been captured by Sri Valmiki in a very beautiful conversation. Bhagwan has mentioned it, but not in this detail, at least in my knowledge. But this conversation is very interesting, very unique. And the more we dwell into this conversation, you get a vision of Ram as a king, as a guide, as a guru. What was his vision of a statehood, of a king? And when I look at that and I look at Swami, his lifestyle, I find a lot of similarities and an equivalent vision. This conversation, I'm very happy to share that there are many people who are so passionate about all these things, and there are brothers from IIT who have done this work and captured it, translated this conversation into verses. I'm going to share that link, so all of you are welcome to study it in further detail. But today we are going to look at that glimpse. So that is why it is very interesting that how Ram and Bharat start this conversation. And now you will notice that even though Ram had left just for a week, and Bharat, in that poor time, he came from Kekaya, he did his final rites of his father, and then marched towards Ayodhya. So, practically speaking, Bharat has not ruled even for a single day. Bharat has not taken over as a ruler or even as a caretaker for even a single day. But the way Sri Ram questions Bharat, that is very interesting. And from that, we get an idea of what is the concept of governance in Ram's eye. And mind you, Ram had not started ruling. So we can't say this is the Ram Rajya concept. But I can certainly feel that if that was a vision of Ram, that was expectation of Ram from Bharat, who had not even ruled for a day, but his questioning is as if Bharat has been ruling for years. That gives us a glimpse into Ram of his vision, his expectation of what king should be, what governance should be, what should be the model of ruling. And that is why I like the definition of, when we say definition of itihas, as we have heard last time, is dharma artha kama moksham upadesha samanvitam pura vratam kathayuktam itihasam parichakshate. So what we are listening, what we are discussing is itihas, because it has the summation of dharma artha kama moksha, and it is happened. It is a documentation, a story depiction of what has already happened. So, what I'm sharing, what we are discussing, what we are finding out is not something which is imaginative, but something real, our own history, our own heritage. So, let us jump into this concept of Ram Rajya as shared by Bhagwan Ram himself to Bharat, in the form of a question, in the form of a discussion. And this is what I would like all of us to really give it a thought and understand what is happening. The first question Bhagwan Ram asks, and that is a very interesting thing to really look at it. If you look at the translation, Bhagwan, the Sanskrit words, if I literally translate, it says, I hope. That's how Bhagwan Ram addresses Bharat and says, I hope that elders in your kingdom are respected and their needs and health are taken care of. I hope the gurus and preceptors are all well taken, respected, taken care of, and respected and cared for. So there is an I hope is a starting start, like a sentence. That's how Ram is asking. So there is a firmness, there is a softness. It is beautifully structured in which he's asking very firmly, but in a polite manner. And that too, mind you, as I mentioned to you, Bharat has not ruled even for a day, but look at the questioning of Ram. So the moment you have been given a task, the moment you have been allocated a responsibility, your time starts. So Bharat had no business to say that, brother, I have not even taken over, and why are you asking me these questions? Why do you hold me responsible for all of that? But look at that era. That's why it's very important for us to understand that era. What we are trying to look at, understand, dissect. We have to first and foremost understand what kind of people were there. How did they even take on responsibilities? And this is the beauty of Rama Rajya. So when I look at it, the first question he asked is about elders. Are they safe? Now, when you think about it, in a society where elders are well taken care of, if the elders are happy, that means obviously the whole family, whole society will be flourishing. Because if elders are happy, you will have a lot of blessings. That means your children, grandchildren are happy. It starts there. It is such a beautiful indicator of a healthy, happy society if your elders are taken care of. Today, unfortunately, we have to make laws that our elders are safe and secure in the society. But look at Rama's vision. The first question he asked Bharat is, are the I hope the elders in our kingdom, in your kingdom, they are safe and their needs are taken care of. And then he asked about preceptors, gurus, priests. Are they? I hope they are able to maintain and do their rituals properly. They are able to do their task well. They are able to study well. They are able to explore scriptures. That is the next question. So the look at the priority of the society. A Rama Rajya concept is not just of a ruler's activity. It is the whole concept of a society. So it starts with elders, then he takes you to preceptors, and then he says that appointed ministers, those who are working for you, those who are responsible. Now we have departments, like we have a transport department, we have an infrastructure department, we have education. There are so many streams. Then he says, I hope you have your selection of these ministers and administrations are all right. You're doing it in the appropriate manner. And then he asked, I hope as a king you are maintaining discipline. Can you believe that? And Ram questioning the king himself, that I hope you are following difficult and discipline of life. And in that, what I read was very interesting. He has given certain few more, pointers for king. But what I found interesting was this time for reflection. In management training, I always make sure that all the top executives from management manager onwards, in a day they must find some time free. If manager is also working in the same pace as juniors, then there is some problem. There is a problem of growth. There will be a problem of fulfillment and even productivity. So here he says, as a king, even though they have we went last week, we had discussed about the schedule of the king. And here you see that he, in that schedule also, he's saying, I hope you have time for self reflection. Because as a king, you need to calm down. Only then, that self reflective mode, you will be able to get better insight and strength to face the life. Isn't that beautiful? So look at all that drama, and then he says, as a king, you follow the discipline, but also find time for reflection. I hope you find time for reflection. Look at the next point. I'm just trying to do few of the points here because that will be interesting for us to explore and understand how Ram, Lord Ram has shared the journey, the whole social structure, how it should be built. He also gives us a very beautiful insight into decision making. He said major and critical decisions should not be made alone, neither alone nor with too many people consulting you. So, as a king, or as a manager, or as a ruler, or as a person of responsibility, always have a selective core team or advisors with whom you consult. So, never make a decision alone, neither make it in such a public way that you can't even decide which one is right. So, decision making consultation is the key here. Like that, if you really let us look at few more interesting aspects which I found interesting. In fact, all of these are much, like, they play wonderful roles here. Secrecy, another thing. If you look at it, secrecy, he expects, I hope, that what decisions you are making or what you're planning is not leaked out to anybody, especially to your neighboring kings, till that plan is executed. So, can you imagine the precision and the ability of a king to do the planning, preparation, and not let anybody know till the execution? That was an art and expectation of Lord Ram. He has given certain beautiful the advisors. As we look at it, he has to look for advisors and consultation. Look at what he says about the advisors. They should be wise, fearless, and valorous. So people would think that advisor can be anybody. So why should he be valorous? He doesn't have to fight, he's just advising. But look at what the characteristics he has given: fearless and valorous. Fearless, so that you don't get bogged back down with anybody. And you have the right as an advisor to criticize and question the king himself. And valorous, that you can face any challenges. When you walk the path of truth, these are very normal things. But look at the credentials, the qualifications which Bhagwan Ram expects from an advisor. And obviously, there is a skill for execution. But look at the another one. Ministers assigned by you must be self restrained, morally strong, of the best character. So here he's saying the character part is so important in selection of ministers. So it is not just the quality, the qualification of the person, but it is the character of the person which is more given more credential, more important in choosing. Look at this one, attribute of a commander of army. See, I never thought that Lord Ram would say, I hope he's cheerful. Who expects in selection of a commander in chief, you would like the valorous, intelligent, determined, all that I can understand, but cheerful? That's a very interesting aspect. A positively vibrant commander in chief who has a smile on his face, who can bring positivity to people. But look at further, of noble birth and is devoted. If you really look at it, the way and we look at it as we go forward also, how wars were done, how conquering was done is also a new concept for us to explore. And that is why these factors become very important for us to understand. He also believed in recognizing war heroes. He also expected the king that salaries and all that should be paid on time, punctually to everybody. Do not trouble them. And look at what he says. I hope in your kingdom you are allowing the environment for upbringing noble and mighty children who believe in the common cause. He's not saying your children. Mind you, at that time, none of the brothers had any children. But look at what he expects, that the whole state or whole kingdom, their children must be noble and mighty, and they must all believe in the common cause. And that is the key connecting point of the king with his subjects. And we'll look at it very soon. But the responsibility of the king was to create that environment, the opportunities for them to upbring noble and mighty children. We choose envoys, like today we have very much popular our foreign ministers and all that. Look at what he says. The envoy should be born in your land, well versed in statescraft, favorable and articulate. Spy network, I like the ratio of it. I'm sure it depends on the size of the country and all that. But what he says is if you send 18 spies in your neighboring kingdom, then you must have 15 spies within your country also. And there should be one monitor on every three spies. So this is how the ratio of a spy network a king has to maintain. Today we have raw, we have so many other spy network in the world. But understanding the norm, understanding the reasoning, how they do it, and logic, 15 internal, then 18 outside. It's almost same. And then you have a supervisor or a monitor on every three. The next line is very interesting for us to really look at it, and I would like to spend little time on it for us to really get a little better understanding of how it worked in that era. And let me read it for you first. Being alert to the kings vanquished in the war, watch them closely. Now look at what he says. Today we always talk about that, especially let's take an example of India per se. We in India they believe that Indians never fought. Okay, they never tried to capture others' land. But here we have historically, if you look at it, sometimes they show you that the whole continent from Iraq to Indonesia was Bharat land, and there are kings who have ruled over the whole, you know, length and breadth of this land. And in Rama's time, they said the whole earth was ruled by the kings. So how can that be possible if the kings don't go on war or conquering war, vanquishing in war? And when they do war, what is the concept of it? And if you have defeated a king, then obviously the king is out, right? If you conquer a country today, or today I should not say, but yeah, if you conquer a country or a land, then obviously the conquering means that you have removed that king and put yours. So what is the problem? What is this sentence which says, be alert to the kings vanquished in war, watch them closely. So are the kings who have been defeated still ruling, or they're moving freely? So if you look at it historically, we find that all the kings, they were governed in a different manner. In this time, you notice we know the story of Ram has conducted Ashwamedh Yajna, they call it, the sacrificial horse yajna, wherein a horse is chosen, selected, and he runs, and whichever land he covers, that becomes part of the kingdom. If anybody revolts, then they have to fight with the army, and the king will take over. So that way, it's called Ashwamedh Yajna, and it's believed and is documented that Lord Ram has done hundreds of Ashwamedh Yajnas, and his father has also done many Ashwamedh Yajnas. So all the kings who are of that Chakravartin power, they conduct Ashwamedh Yajnas. So if you have already covered Ashwamedh Yajna, then what was the need for Ram to do Ashwamedh Yajna again and again? The concept of conquering was not the way we understand it today. It was not as if you go and kill some people or conquer that land and throw the king in the prison. The conquering was more of your ideological conquer. When the king says, I am the ruler, and he sends his horse as a sign of victory, and if I am the next king and I accept it, so what I'm accepting is that yes, I know Ram has got a better strategy of rule. He, in his kingdom, people are happy, prosperous. He has a better understanding of how a society should be governed. And he is very powerful to protect me too. So I say, I accept you as my Lord. And in turn, I will give you tax. But in return of the tax, what will Ram give? Ram gives his governance model, his protection, his code of conduct, and everything what he visualizes as Ram Rajya. He will come and assist this kingdom to grow into the same prosperous country as Ram's. So it did not mean that the king of the other country has to be removed, put behind bars, or have a war. Nothing of that kind. But yes, if any king revolted back, then they will conquer. But that revolt was also done only against those kings who were not treating their population properly. It wasn't as if Ram sends his horse and the horse starts running, say, towards Janakpuri. So Janak king would accept it. Now there's a relationship, but even if suppose relationship was not there, he would receive the horse and accept Ram. In turn, the Ram would provide, Dashrath would provide him the protection and everything. But if Janak has some good merits in his rule, he would continue so and there will be no interference. So when the story says that Dashrath ruled the whole country or whole continent and some kings ruled the whole earth, that was not as if they have, you know, like you have other, kings who have done wars and killed people to win that land. Here it was basically a moral governance. Here it was more of a spiritual oversight that now you are under my care and I will take care of it. And that is the beautiful reason in the last episode, brother uh, Raghunath Raju, he explained that why the fight in the forest, which we have already dealt, was done to show the territorial pull. That fight was not done in any kingdom, because kingdoms were acceptance of Ram's superiority. But the forest land which was left out, which is a no man's land, only the superior king had to oversee it. And in that capacity, Ram was protecting the forest dwellers. So when you look at it this way, the whole concept of war was very different. Unless and until you are ideologically different and you have a better governance model, you have a prosperous society, You could not even do Ashwamedh Yagya. And when you have it, others would happily accept you, and it becomes a larger continent. That is why you will see that the spread of the kings were always there, but it did not mean that Ram had to physically go and conquer somebody or put his sons and children or somebody as a ruler of the country where he won. And we have got many examples wherein you can see in the recorded history also in front of us, where when he destroyed Bali, Sugriv was given the kingdom. When he killed Ravana, well, his brother was given the kingdom. So Ram never took anything, but the moment Vibhishan accepted Ram, so Lanka also became part of Ayodhya, because that, as they say, the umbrella of Ram was part of it. That is why they say it was holistic. The whole land was Ram. That's why today also in excavations we can find the traces of Ram everywhere. And the way they have defined Bharatvarsh was on top Himalaya, bottom ocean, and rest whole land. And which, if you look at the globe in a straightforward way, if you look at the globe when from Indian perspective, you will see whatever is visible on one end where the globe starts curving, it is almost Iraq. From that to the Indonesian border, the whole continent, whole world was considered to be Bharatvarsha. And that is why Ram has made this very beautiful statement that I hope you are alert and watching over the kings who have been vanquished in war, because they are still ruling. Most of the kings are still ruling because they have accepted Ram or Dashrath's superiority, and they are following it. But you never know, internally they might be planning something more. So the spy network is needed to monitor that, so you can't get a surprise from there. And we'll see, even though Ram, that governance of Dashrath was everywhere, but the equality was not there. Implementation was missing. That's why when we see how when Ram goes as a child on a tour of the country, the whole country, he finds many places which required some shelter homes, some orphanages, and he keeps building them as he travels around. Okay, so just to get an idea and a perspective about how the wars were handled, what was the concept of conquering. The conquering was not always like killing somebody or destroying a kingdom to win it over. It was more of a concept of conquering with ideology. It was an ideology conquer, that now I accept your ideology, your supremacy, and in turn, I would give you tax and you give me everything else. So the know how, the model, everything comes from Ram, and the people would just as a. But look at what happens otherwise. Suppose there's a drought, there's a natural calamity. That time, the Ram Rajya concept, you give away, you let concessions in your tax payment, and all that is also mentioned. It is so beautiful. Okay, next point is also very very interesting, and I find it very intriguing too. It says, "Be alert to Brahmins who think of this world and who get carried away by the so-called logic." Now, the concept of Brahmins, as we understand, is the person who is pursuing Brahman or knowledge. That is why it is very important for a Brahmin to have internal saturation, internal fulfillment. They should internally feel that they don't have any craving for the world. It doesn't mean that they will live a beggar's life. No, certainly not. But the desire for multiplicity of instant gratification, that is not for Brahmin class. So if I consider myself as a Brahmin and I'm pursuing that life, my focus should not be the world. Even though I enjoy the worldly needs, whatever I need, I can have the best bed possible, I can have best food possible, but not because of craving for bed and food, but for the need, what is required, and live properly of the standard. So that is what he says. Be alert. And he says they should not be part of your advisors, especially those Brahmins who first think of the world and get carried away by logic. See, this logic is a big problem. Today, everybody knows little, but they can logically twist every sentence. We all are expert in that. We all can take a sentence and twist it and turn it just to suit our own understanding. So he says, beware of such Brahmins, such intellectual people who are more skewed towards logic than the truth. I'll give you a little understanding from that perspective. Suppose you see a person in need, but logically, like in the court of law today, if you do not have proofs, so-called proofs, then logically says, okay, he's free to walk. But a Brahmin who uses the scriptures, who uses the knowledge only logically, becomes danger, because truth has to be filtered through logic but has to go through intuition. So if you miss out intuitiveness in a Brahmin, then there is a problem. So that is why this statement is very fantastic. See, I hope you are alert to Brahmins who think of this world and get carried away by the so called logic. So people who are in logic must be careful about it. And then there are more stuff of border security, valorous army, ammunition. So he says there's another beautiful thing which he talks about in border security. He says, now look at it. Lord Ram is telling us that not only you require army, ammunitions, horses and elephants. That time they were the fighting things. Today it could be aircrafts, tanks, and whatever. But learned scholars, successful businessmen, and self-restrained, duty-minded citizens. So border security is not a task limited to the armed forces. So in a Ram Rajya concept, look at what he does. That is a concept which tells us that even as scholars, like poets, writers, and teachers, they become equally important participant and contributor and stakeholders for the national security. Even businessmen can help. And I'm sure today when we look at our every country, you look at it, the total made in stuff, technologies, and people jumping in to make safety gears and security items. So those are business people. And then citizens. Without the citizens' involvement, what security and you're talking about? So this concept is also Ram Rajya. How to execute is the beautiful thing. And then he talks about the rural life and the city life. And there are measurements to it. How do you measure flourishing of a rural life? So he indicates that indicators as self-reliant. So which means a village must have everything in it. So what is needed for a village self-sustenance must be there. That self-sustenance reliance is the key word for flourishing of rural life. And he talks large about animals. And there is a very beautiful statement which he has made. I hope you are never satiated, never satisfied in increasing your cattle feeds, cattle and animals and cows and all that. Why? It's a very phenomenal thing. When I read, it says when Bharat also when they sent note for Bharat to come, the Valmiki writes in a very beautiful way that even Bhagwan says that they send a lot of gifts because they didn't want to make it a noise that something is unfortunate happened. So they send a lot of gifts because you can't go empty-handed to your place. So to invite Bharat back, they send a lot of gifts for him, for his uncles and everybody. And when Bharat comes back, the uncle and the father of Kekai, he gives a lot of gifts. No, the father of Kekai had died that time. Sorry. So uncle gives him a lot of gifts. So imagine, and the gifts are in like hundreds of horses and elephants and cattle and all that. So it's a huge number. And you always wonder, like, what is this exchange going on? The first, the measurement of the prosperity was based on these things. Secondly, imagine a kingdom having so many cattle, so many elephants and horses. That means they have that kind of strength and they have a need for it because of wars, because of internal security, because of prosperity. Because when you have cow and all that, you get milk, you get so many things. So there is a chain reaction to the whole social development. So the beauty is the Ramayana he writes there should be an unsatiated desire to build these animal farming. So you must never stop in increasing this. And today, if you look at it, it's very funny that we are talking about safety of animals, and we have animal protectors and those who are vigilantes about cows. So today we are doing it in a different attitude. And look at that time, the era, it was accepted that they are part of nature and they need to flourish. Because when animal kingdoms flourish, we will flourish. So it was very beautifully mixed and matched. So it was not something against something, it was together. Then he talks about women. But here, very interesting thing he has mentioned. He says, be careful. First, he tells the take care of women. They should be well taken care of, protected, and all that. And then he says, be mindful that do not let your secrets to the women clan, because that gossip can travel faster than you can imagine. So be careful about the gossips happening. So nothing against our sisters, but there is a watchful tendency of gossips going. So it says be careful about it. This is another beautiful aspect. And when I look at, I'm telling you all of this, if you look at it, Bhagwan has played a very beautiful role in his own, capacity. You can see Gokulam in Puttaparthi. We have Swami used to have his own camel, cattle everybody has seen. He had dogs, many dogs actually. Two were very famous, whose stories have been flourishing so much. Obviously, his pet Sai Gita, an elephant. He had horse also, and he had deer. Actually, he had a zoo for us, and zoo was right behind the college, so we could see them. And Swami would go inside the cage to feed these animals. So we have Bhagwan has practically shown us that how one society must be brought out. So he used to take care of every animal. In fact, we had a street dogs. It was She was very pet of our hostel because Swami used to feed her. So she became our pet, and she would freely walk around every whole campus, and everybody would bring her some biscuit or something like that to offer. So Bhagwan, in his own way, has shown exactly what we are reading here. The next point is very interesting because this lesson I have learned from Bhagwan, and it's a perceived value of a spiritual aspirant. When you look at it, Swami was very careful about the perceived value. In fact, for himself also, if you see, he used to be always spick and span. As we have discussed before, he would shave twice. He would have you ever never I would have imagined anybody would see him in a wrinkled robe or looking a little untidy. Never. He was perfect all the time. And the reason was not that he was kind of self-obsessed or something. The reason was because he said, when my devotees look at me, they should feel happy. When they look at their Swami, they should feel happy that my Swami is so beautiful, happy, walking. They should not feel sad that, oh, my Swami is not looking well. So, for that, his attention was devotees, hence, he was perfect. But he maintained a perceived image. And there was another reason. He said, I wear this orchid robe, and hence I'm restricted myself in certain areas because of that. There's a perceived value. And to us also, he said, I'll give you a small example of Prashanti's discipline, and many people may not even know. We were as a student, after darshan, we would meet our parents and our relations outside the Ganesh gate, that Ganesha temple. And one day Bhagwan pointed and he says, you all should not meet there. So they said, Swami, their parents have come, their brothers and sisters are here. And we said, send them to rooms. They can go and meet them in the room or they can come to the hostel and meet. But don't stand there and talk. And a very obvious question was, why? You don't get to understand these things sometimes, unfortunately. So Bhagwan says, see, I know you are brother and sister. I know you are a mother and son. But the world does not know. They may misinterpret. They may misconstrue. So I am fine. You go to the room and meet. But outside, when you talk, it gives a wrong impression to you that Bhagwan's children are interacting openly like that. A perceived value of a student brahmacharya life is the key, and that is how it grows also. I have seen Bhagwan stopping eminent artists from performing once their public image is tarnished. So you wonder why. And Bhagwan once was standing there and he had stopped somebody from performing, and a very eminent person who used to perform till 10 days back or something like that. And it was a very big question mark that Swami, he did some mistake, a small mistake, but why did you stop? And Bhagwan was that night standing there in front of us and he says, Kya kar sakta? Maryada. What can I do? If I allow him today also, then people will misunderstand and say, okay, Sai Baba allows these kind of habits. And my small children can get a wrong lead, an example. So, for the sake of leading, setting a right example, Bhagwan had to take action. So, it does not mean that he was pretending before. It is like he was giving a long rope to us. Hey, get fixed, get fixed, get fixed. Because the moment you are a public figure, the moment you are in a place of influence, then you have a responsibility whether you accept it or not, whether you like it or not. See, when people get angry or express their frustration towards film stars or sports stars, it is because they have treated them as some kind of a role model. And sometimes those stars will tell, we are just an actor, why do you follow? But you can't help it because you are part of that influencing society which have reached a level of influence to the any people. So if you do not conduct in the proper befitting manner, then you will be responsible for everybody's mess. That is law of karma. So for that, the perceived value of a devotee is equally important than his real image. And that is where Bhagwan used to say, pretend, tend, and end. You can't keep on pretending, but you have to start with pretension. Sometimes you have to pretend to be good, because many times we have told Swami, I'll tell you, There are many stories. I'm sure when our brothers would join, they can share more with you. That many times Bhagwan would come and praise a student. Oh, he's a fantastic boy. Many times he'll be in a graduation and he would say, Swami say, oh, he's a PhD already. And you are looking down, wondering like why Bhagwan is telling when I am not that. And later on, obviously, all of this turned out to be true. But I'll tell you one nice story. It happened. One boy called for an interview, and Bhagwan praised him like this. Oh, he's the best boy. He's very disciplined, and he gave him so many superlatives that that boy started crying. And ultimately, when he was alone with God, he said to Swami, in tears in his eyes, he said, Swami, whatever you said outside, you know it was not true. I'm not like that. Why did you praise me so much? And Bhagwan smiled and he said, yes, I know. All that what I said is what I expect from you, and I want you to become that. See, this is what his perceived image is. When he raises us to that level of morality, and then he says, maintain it. You may slip, but that is the goal. And that is how our nation was built. Our nation did not, like in West, we used to joke always that, you call 911 and the cop is outside your door in few minutes, sometimes in seconds, because they are ever patrolling. But in India, you can call whatever number you like, and they would joke that okay, only when the person is died, that the police will come. So the point is that here the governance model was more of a moral governance than a legal governance. Whereas in the other thought, there is a legal governance more than moral governance. So there we say, okay, I'm 18, I can do anything. Now legally you can't touch me. Here, even if you're 80, your mother can slap you. Your mother can govern you. The society governs us. We are if we can do anything, but if we know that somebody is watching me and neighbor is watching me, my governance, my behavior changes because we are governed morally. And for moral governance, perceived image is the key. Can you imagine our politicians and our leaders if the perceived value is lost? What chaos they can create? Today, at least, they are talking about values, they are talking about goodness just to keep their public image right. They can be anything behind the scene, but in front, they are at least trying, and they are scared that if that image goes, their voting will go and they will lose the benefits and the perks of this perceived imagery. So imagine the moral governance, how strong it can become. Now, this whole perceived should not be taken limited to just an hypocritic way of life. It is actually a stepping stone towards the real life. So perceived imagery gives you that leeway, that kind of bandwidth, wherein you can rectify your image, you can rectify your path, you can still come back to the right path. But during the perceived imagery, if you cannot maintain it and you lose it, then you have lost the game for this birth. Then God save you. So perceived value is very important, and that is why probably Lord Ram even mentions it separately. I hope you maintain a very clean public image. And we know about Ram that for one negative statement against Ram, Sita took that step. Well, that we'll discuss later on. But it is the imagery. So from here we can understand at what level, at what standard Lord Ram kept himself and expected the society to be. And that is the beautiful part. There is small little thing about the surplus budget, and he can you imagine Ram asking Bharat, who has not even ruled for a day, and he's asking him, I hope your economy is in surplus. and you're using your surplus budget towards what? Towards gods, which means temples and ashrams are maintained well. Your forefathers, which means your charities, your social work is done. Learned Brahmins, guests, warriors, and friends. So surplus budget to be used for these people. So another indicator that how strong economically also a country must be to provide for that. Justice, late justice is no justice. That's what he's talking about. Facilitation is another beautiful part. When we say acknowledgement, like today I hear, when Indian teams have won, the prime minister gives a call. Now the call, physically and financially, it may make no sense, but morally it creates an amazing motivational theory. So imagine a sports person getting a call from the head of state and congratulating them and inviting them for a tea or coffee or something. It is a beautiful way of such a powerful motivation. So, but here he's given you a very beautiful thing about how each age section should be facilitated. Old people through charity, that means spend on them. That's what he told you before also, spend on them. And then he says, youngsters through affection, a pat at the back, a hug. Learned through kind words, a word of appreciation for the learned is enough. So facilitation, it is a very exciting thing for me and a mind-boggling thing that Ram would ask these questions to Bharat at the very outset when they have just met, the first meeting of Ram and Bharat in the forest. And these are the questions to be asked. And Bharat is just staring at Ram, looking at him. And I don't know what must be going on in his mind. And I know because when Ram finishes these questions, Bharat then replies in a very humble way. So that way we get an idea about Bharat's mindset. But he is listening to all of this with attention because he knows whatever comes out of Bhagwan's mouth, whatever is uttered by the Lord, is for a purpose. So no questions asked, Bharat listens to it very attentively. Now here we have another thing which is very interesting, and I'm sure if people have watched Bhagwan Baba's video, it was on YouTube also for a long time. Uh, Here Swami speaks about the time. I have mentioned it here. These sattva, rajas, and tamas, these three attributes are divided in 24 hours, 8 hours each. So as shared here, from 4 a.m. to 8 a.m. is sattvic time. 8 to 4 is rajasic. 4 to 8 is sattvic. And 8 to 4 a.m. is tamasic. This Bhagwan had shared with students in inspiring us and in motivating us to, why one should get up early in the morning and why you should study in this period, why you should work in this period and all that. And he has stressed on these elements. He says, understand the body, the nature, the whole creation is revolving around these three gunas. So if you sync yourself with these three attributes, your growth and development will become easy and better. So in Ram, when I was reading this translation, even in Lord Ram says, I hope not only you are performing the task allocated during the respective times. This is exactly what Ram also has said and Bhagwan Baba also has said it. Ram was telling to Bharat, asking him question, and Bhagwan Baba has shared this and taught us this for us to follow this. So message is same, references are different. So Lord Ram says to Bharat, I hope you are not only following the respective time for a respective task, but also not doing what is not in this time zone, which means what you're supposed to do as a sattvic time, you don't do that task in the rajasic time. So you can't get up in the, at 11 o'clock in the afternoon and you say, okay, let me read some scriptures now, or let me do meditation at this hour. Because this is the time of rajas, which means activity, valorous. You have to perform your duties and responsibilities of an adult responsible person. So, whichever role of ashram you are in, we are supposed to perform according to that between 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. And if we do what we are supposed to do between 4 a.m. to 8 a.m., then we are doing wrong. And Bhagwan Baba used to be always careful about it, and he would point out to us that always learn there are two sides of every atom. So he would never give us half instructions, and he would always tell you that. So suppose he says, don't do this. He would always tell you what to do. See, like this is our parenting lesson we all can learn from. See, for parenting style or a teacher's style, we look at a children making noise. Suppose they are making noise. So, what is the first instinctive response a parent would do, or even a teacher does? They say, boys, keep it calm, cool down, stop talking, don't make noise. That's all we say. This is only half the instruction. So, when you tell a child, do not play, don't make noise, child is a child. If he was making noise, that means he did not know anything better to do, hence, he was doing that. So, we are supposed to tell him, don't make noise, this is your reading time, go and read. So now I have given him the full spectrum, what he should not do, why he should not do, what he should do, and why he should do. When we combine these two, then the sentence becomes proper. So this was Bhagwan's very beautiful way of teaching us that every time you share these thoughts, always keep in mind, as a parent, as an adult, as a teacher, always complete the thought. So Bhagwan would say, if you say don't do this, you must also say what to do. So he would always say the full sentence. And this is what Ram has said to Bharat, that Bharat, I hope you are doing what you are supposed to do, respecting the time zone of Sattva, Rajas, and Tamas. And I hope you are not doing what you are not supposed to do during the respective times. So don't sleep during Rajasic time. Don't pray during Tamasic time. Now, this whole clock is for ordinary beings like us. Don't superimpose this to the saints and seers. They have a different clock. Because for them, the boundaries of these three gunas are not that hard and fast. They are not bound and limited or governed by these boundaries strictly, because they are mostly in sattva. And many times you will hear a very beautiful verse which says that at night when everybody sleeps, the sages wake up. And when the world sleeps, they wake up, and when the world wakes up, they sleep. So that is a different equation altogether. So please do not superimpose our limited knowledge onto them. These governance are given for us mortals, not for gods and godly people. So performing of task is a very beautiful time, and it is very nostalgic for people who have, who have experienced that with Bhagwan. And you can even see it on the video, and I'm sure you will find it in the YouTube. It is so nicely Bhagwan has explained and made us repeat So what is 4 and 8? Between 4 a.m. and 8 a.m., then we all will shout Sattvic time. Then you would reverse the question and say, okay, what is Sattvic time? And we say, Swami, morning 4 to 8 a.m. and evening 4 to 8 a.m. It says 4 plus 4, 8. And that's how Bhagavan encouraged, drilled into the system that what you're supposed to do when you're supposed to do. And the beauty is, even in Rama's time, if you really seriously read about it and explore it, you realize that the morning started at 4 o'clock and ended at 9 o'clock. The day starts at 4 and ends at 9. Even when you look at Puttaparthi, the format is same. It starts at 4 and ends at 9. Officially, everything is same. But somehow, we leave that template only in Prashanti when we step out. There are various reasons. But what I find intriguing and interesting is this aspect that whatever Ram was conceiving as Ram Rajya, whatever Lord Ram has shared as his vision of governance, was exactly what Lord Sai executed and did it. So we didn't even have to worry or think about it. And that is the reason I feel probably when people ask Swami, when is the golden age? People, we have heard about golden age and Swami has talked about it and people are sharing about it. And Bhagavan very beautifully would say, hey, golden age is here. It's already here. And we would laugh at it and we would not understand what he meant by that. But now when I study this Rama Rajya, I am forced to understand and accept that what he did already was there. So we have arrived. Now, unfortunately, we have not realized it. That's it. And that, I think, is the big problem. So, anyways, I'm sure he has the better timing to make us not only realize it, but to convert it into our lifestyle so that we can consciously enjoy and live by that. Let's look at it few more aspects of Ram Rajya. I think that would give us a better glimpse. Now, here in this slide, I've captured. I honestly, I tried to read through it, and I couldn't find much. So I will explore further, and if I can get hold of little understanding of these, there are so many coded versions like tenfold path, fivefold path, eightfold path. So there are tools of governance and the tools of statecraft. So these have to be part of what we studied in our last like a session about the education of the whole warfare. So probably these are parts of that which are mentioned in a very quick way when Ram is asking me, I hope the king is ruling righteously, following the tenfold, fivefold, eightfold, and trifold. And what are these? I'm sorry, I'm not aware and I couldn't find it here. But let us hope and pray that Bhagavan would send somebody who would have a better understanding of these areas and we would be happy to share. I have not heard from Swami, and in my little reading, I could not find the explanation for it. So we will keep exploring, and I'm sure Bhagavan would guide us. And see, the 14 qualities to be eschewed by a king: atheism, untruth, anger, inattentiveness, procrastination, laziness, evading of learned ones, gratification of senses, deciding without consulting anyone, consulting with non experts, not starting the determined task on time, not protecting the scarcity of consultation, and being a secrecy of consultation, and being and employing inauspiciousness and attack several enemies at once. So these are very crisp in which he has asked him about certain specific to the king what he should do. So that's why I put that in together, and we can see that he starts with everything else, and then he's asking a specific questions to the king. about statecraft, about you know, about governance and everything else, and what he should avoid as a king. So it's very interesting, but unfortunately, I do not have any further description about these eightfold, sixfold, 20-fold, and all that. So, what are these statecrafts? If somebody has any better knowledge, I would invite them. It'll be nice to learn from everybody. So, from little my little understanding, I don't know, and I have not found Bhagwan elaborating on these things. Probably because they are very much towards the king's job rather than the society. Okay, and in few more points I have put together as tenets from Rama's consultation. Consult 3 to 4 ministers individually and collectively on important matters and maintains most secrecy. So here he's again reiterating that, but he's saying minimum 3 to 4 ministers individually and collectively must be consulted, and everything must be kept in a perfect secrecy. Okay, regular study of Ved. This is a very beautiful thing, and I was forced to think. I can't help but think about a 9 point code of conduct of Bhagwan. You know, we think that Swami has given us a lifestyle to live, but actually it is part of this whole cosmic vision. Constant study is very critical, and everybody will tell you, that when we put children into the habit of reading through the books at night, before you sleep. So, what you should study and how one should study, regular study of Ved, and this is a lead to a fruitful lifestyle. So, it is imagine he's asking us to do that in a very religious and a proper manner. And obviously, sanctified intellect focused towards gaining long life through trifold utilities of Dharma, Artha, and Kama. So, now what he's telling you at the end is very interesting. Uh, he's highlighting the importance of dharma. I have shared this dharma a couple of times, but here it becomes more pertinent to revise that and to just, uh, I think, discuss it further. And at this point, I would like to open it up for people. As you can see that unfortunately, other brother who was supposed to join me had some emergency and could not come. So I'm doing my bit here. But in case anybody else has any questions or thoughts, you are welcome. And please share your feelings on thoughts on your chat, and anything pertinent, we will love to discuss it here. Okay. So here I would like to spend some time on the concept of dharma, as we notice that Lord Ram, in his dictum of Ram Rajya, is stressing a lot on dharma. He's talking about everything should be governed through dharma, and I would like to create a model as I have gathered from these learnings. Maybe in next session I would try to bring that model and share it with all of us. uh, there is a proper there's a lot of focus on the concept of dharma, and he says everything should be based on dharma. Every responsible person, every citizen must follow their dharma. So there is a lot of discussion and a lot of instructions on dharma. So I think it is important and pertinent here to share few thoughts on what is dharma. Unfortunately, in today's context, dharma has been restricted, if I may say so, and translated very roughly as religion. Let me share my thoughts that religion, the organized religion per se, appeared roughly around 3,000 years back. And what we are talking today is 20,000 years back. And as you can see, the concept of dharma was existent even at that time and much before. Okay, so Vedas, as we have seen and understood through our various sessions, they are the starting point of the whole creation, the cosmic sound captured through rishis and seers, as documented as termed as Ved. So Dharma is mentioned in Ved. So it is beyond, it precedes even Rama's era. It is starting. So this Dharma cannot be religion as we understand it today. So when we look at religion, it becomes a very organized structure of following certain process, certain rituals, a program, a system, which we feel is going to help us to achieve certain goal. But this concept of dharma was not before 3000 years. So what is this dharma that Ram is so passionately talking? That dharma which Ram is expecting Bharat that not only he follows, but every citizen of the nation must follow. And that is why he was called Dharmaraj. Dharmas, he was an embodiment of Dharma. So, what is this Dharma that he's talking about? So, when you look at Dharma from a Vedantic perspective, as we may choose to call it, Dharma in a simple term means code, a code of conduct. Every atom of this creation follows their own instinctive behavior, nature. That nature which we are made up of, which we represent, which ultimately we realize is dharma. So, dharma is not only the starting point, it is not only the ending point, it is also the process. It is the person who is doing, and the activity he is doing is dharma. So, dharma becomes, we can use dharma as an adjective, as a noun, anything we want. So when I act, I can say I'm acting as dharma. What I'm achieving is also dharma. I'm acting to sustain dharma. I'm acting to highlight dharma. I'm acting on the basis of dharma. So everywhere you use dharma is right, because dharma is the code, is the secret code which is everywhere. So as an atom has a dharma of movement, it's a light, it's an energy. Energy has its own dharma. Similarly, we as a being have our own dharma. So that dharma which is related to my being, Bhagwan Baba used to call it as Atma Dharma. It is a self dharma. He says that is the most important dharma than any other dharma you can follow. And that is one governing dharma which must guide, regulate, and lead all the other dharmas that you are following. So, which means for Atma Dharma, if you have to compromise on other dharma, so be it, because that should not be compromised. In a physical term, we would say if Bhagavan says we would do anything, then we don't care if anybody says, hey, this is not right or wrong. Swami says means do it. Why did we say that? And why did we do that? Because Bhagwan in that form was only reflecting my own Atma, my own self. And that is why that Atma Dharma, his words became my Atma Dharma. His indicator became my Atma Dharma. So that words became the superior most in my being. Because Atma Dharma is the highest. Now, till we reach that Atma Dharma stage, when we are trapped in our body consciousness, we are forced to do our other dharmas, other dharma of my body, of my mind, of the intricacies of three gunas, the sattvas, There is a dharma of sattvic guna. There is a dharma of rajasic guna. That's why when we saw this slide of time, that also is governed by dharma, because I have to respect the dharma of the nature. And Bhagavan would sweetly say, look, when the night falls, even the birds go to sleep, even the animals go to sleep, because they follow the dharma instinctively. You have been given intellect, so you have to be conscious about your following dharma. But everybody goes to rest when tamasic time comes. Everybody goes to work when rajasic time comes to work. Everybody must contemplate, go introspective when sattvic time comes to work. So this is the dharma which everybody follows. It so happens that the animal kingdom and the plant kingdom follows these dharma instinctively, whereas the human kingdom, who have been bestowed with intellect, must follow consciously. That's all. So dharma is not a religious doctrine to follow. It is our life breath. Then, when I have this dharma defined in this way, then everything I do falls under the purview of dharma. Now, in Atma Dharma, I may choose till I have understood my own Atman as the oneness of God. I may choose Bhagavan Baba's form as my God, as my reflective understanding of the Supreme Consciousness. And my dharma towards him is that I want to love him. That love may take a shape of prayer. It may take a shape of bhajan, singing. It may take a shape of havan or worship, or it may take a shape of seva, service. So be it. And when that happens, those are also part of my dharma, must be followed, keeping in mind that I am not serving somebody, I am doing my dharma as a devotee. I am doing my dharma as the Devansh, that part and parcel of my Lord. So, this is how the dharma gets filtered down in every action of our life. And that is where Bhagavan says, nothing is outside the purview of dharma. And how do we know that we are following it right? Is only through satya, the truth. So the moment we want to validate our dharma, we have to go back to truth. That's all. So if we validate, we know our truth. So suppose, for example, for me, the truth could be that I'm a human being and I'm a man. And in that human being, I am performing an activity. And if I perform an activity, I can always validate, did I behave like a human being or not? As a human being, I'm a son, I'm a daughter, I'm a wife, husband, whatever. I can always come back. I'm not a monkey's husband, I'm a human husband. I'm not a dog's child, I'm a human child. So, how I should conduct? See, this differentiation, Bhagavan would very beautifully say, it will help you to correct. So, always when you are in a dilemma to know whether your activities are right or not, you must always question and say to yourself, I'm a human child or I'm a divine child. How must I conduct? And you will find a way. Isn't it beautiful? It is such an enlightening and easy format to fix things. Just a questioning yourself as to what am I doing? What am I doing? And if I get that, he says, you will find your way. And the beauty of Bhagwan's teaching, another beauty I should say, is that he may not give you clear answers for all the questions you may ask or may pose, but he will give you a clear formula with which you can get all the answers you need. So he has touched on every aspect of life through those coded versions. That's why I say use his statements. I always believe that I use his statements as a law, as a formula. And anytime you have an issue, just read the formula and then implement it. Don't worry whether the formula is right or wrong. No, don't get into those jargons. They are law. Just follow and you will do it. So our choice is ours, whether you want to reinvent the wheel or you want to accept the wheel and then drive the car. So dharma is a concept very beautifully explained by Bhagavan. And now I read Ram and I understand that even as Ram, the same thing has been communicated. That everybody is following their dharma. So it doesn't mean that they have 100 religions going on there. Every child, every adult has an own religion. But every being has their own duties and responsibilities. Are they honest about it? Are they truthful about it? Are they true to themselves in following, implementing, and executing their assigned task, keeping in mind that everything is done for the divine? And that is the key. So, if you want to understand, validate dharma, for us, Bhagavan has said very beautifully, always take it back to truth. That I am doing this work perfectly as a father, I am doing this work perfectly as a teacher, as an engineer, as a lawyer, whatever. So I should be fine with my dharma, right? But no. Is this activity leading me to the truth? Am I doing this activity in the name of truth? Then it becomes dharma. So every activity must generate the thought of truth. Every action must lead us into the self inquiry of truth. The moment that is why Bhagavan would very easily say to us that even if you're rolling chapatis, say Ram Ram, say Sai Ram. Even if you are performing some activities, say I'm doing it for Swami. What was he doing to us? He was giving us that baby steps in which we start to bring the truth in our practical life. We start to engage God with ourselves. We start to appreciate and understand that God is everything for us. So this is a very beautiful, you know, analogy I learned from Bhagwan, and I see that now in Ram. That Ram is asking the same thing to Bharat. And in my humble opinion, we were all discussing and we realized that this was a vision, because even if you read Ramayana, it unfortunately stops the moment Ram becomes the king. They lived happily ever after, but nobody knows how that happiness was. There is no description of how the governance happened after that. So we are safely presuming that if Ram could expect that from Bharat, he would have practically done it for himself. And now, when I look at Bhagwan Baba's life, it leaves me with no doubt that this is exactly Ram Raj. Because what was not documented as done by Ram is documented and shared as done by Satyasai. So, what Ram questioned Bharat, Satyasai executed it. And this is what Ram Rajya is. And now, when I look at the moral governance part of it, today, when I look at the organizational spread, it is roughly around 110, 12. There's a debate about it always. But it is over 120, around that countries, they have an official presence of the organization. And personally, I have seen people from such countries where one would not even imagine that there will be a devotee of Sai there. People from Pakistan, people from Iraq, Iran, Croatia, all people are there. And then you ask them and they say, oh, we have been going on for a long time. So then you understand that today, if I have to map a Sai Rajya concept, which is a moral governance and governance of influence, I don't think there will be any country in the world which will not be covered under that. So if somebody has to draw a map tomorrow and say, what was the coverage of Satyasai? It will be the whole world. because he has reached that, and his governance is so powerful, as they say, no, the kingdom of Jesus. Jesus kingdom of Christ was not a physical kingdom. It was flourishing in the hearts of his devotees. And Sai's kingdom is like that. So when we say the Ram Rajya, the Sai Rajya concept, I can't help but acknowledge that his influence factor has reached all over the world. There cannot be any country which has not heard of Satya Sai. He has himself reached. So, from that perspective, when Bhagavan said the golden age is here, he was right. Now, as they say, the seed is sown, as Bhagavan would say, no, that when you switch on the fan, it takes time to take the speed. When you switch it off, it takes time to stop. So when Bhagavan said the golden age is here, he has already switched on. So the new era, the new age is already manifesting. And according to Bhagavan's prediction, if I may say, in my limited calculation, 2027-28 is the time when manifestation of this vision will become more easy. People will be able to appreciate and acknowledge what Bhagavan has said about Sai Rajya, that Rama Rajya, the golden age period. So we have few more years to see this amazing transformation of rise of a different consciousness level wherein nothing will be escaped. If people cannot cope up with that, they would not survive. The people have to rise to meet up there, and the Sai era has started already. And so, this concept of Sai Rajya, we will again look at it next week, a little bit more. Maybe I will pray that Swami can help us to build that model which we have gathered from this concept, and we'll be able to share with you. And if you have any thoughts, please, I open the floor. If anybody has any question. Mr. Chamanlal Prakash says, what else does your program come online? I think you wanted to say when. Sir, prayerfully, we do it every Saturday at 6:30 Indian time. So on this channel itself. And as everybody knows, these whole videos are uploaded onto our channel in YouTube. Anything else, if anybody wants to share or say? Thank you for your encouraging words, all of you. But if there is any thoughts, any concept, anything you want to share, you're welcome to email, you're welcome to share. And we will continue this discussion, hopefully and prayerfully. And we'll bring in another flavor of how Bhagavan has described and how Bhagavan has shared about this whole concept. So I wish you all a holy evening, and I am sure enough to contemplate on the Sai Rajya. We are in the land of Sai. So feel blessed, feel proud, feel excited that we are governed by the Master himself. Om Shri Sai Ram.